Welcome. It's great to
Hello.
have all of you here, and especially our guest of honor, Michael Papanek. My name is Carlin Sloan. I'm the CEO of Sloan Group International and host here at Inspiring Leadership. And welcome to the Inspiring Leadership Spotlight. Today, we're going to have Michael talking about his books and his amazing leadership development practice that he's been doing for many years. And it is a privilege to be here with you, Michael. I will let you take it from here.
Thanks so much, Carlin. Yeah, it's great to be here. It's great to have been working with Sloan Group and Carlin for many, many years now. I'm excited to share this. So thanks to everybody who's here. I'm going to go ahead then and share my screen here. Oh, I need, I guess, the ability to share my screen there. Joseph or Zach, it says disabled screen sharing. There it goes. Thank you very much. And we'll do like that. And we'll do like that. And if people can just confirm that they do see my leading Unbreakable teams there.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right. So we are going to, as I say, keep this quite interactive. So what I'm going to ask folks to do in the chat right now, if everybody would like to do that, is just share two things. One is what's your location today? And second, share one attribute of the best team you ever worked on. What was one attribute of the best team you worked for? Share that with everyone, please, in the chat. And then tell us a little bit about where you are. Okay, great to see you, Marty, by the way. That's wonderful. San Francisco. The team was fun. Carlin's in Melbourne. Gretchen, good to see you, is in San Francisco. So again, what's attribute of the team made each other laugh? That's great. That's sort of another fun one. Team was hilarious. They were professional. Zach's in New York. Highland, Florida. The team had great fun. Anybody else wanted to share? I think that's probably most folks. So that's why we're here, is to kind of get into that flow, right? Everybody talked about it's fun, or they were professional, we made each other laugh. What we're going to do today is try to get much more deeply into what exactly makes a team great. What exactly is this idea of an unbreakable team? And then how can you as a leader or even a team member, create this kind of team and hopefully duplicate maybe what was your best team or even better than your last team. I will provide an incentive here for staying. We may use the full hour. We may actually end early, which is fine. But if you stay to the end, I'll let you know that if you put your email address in chat, I'll be sending you a coupon for a free seat in my Udemy leadership class called Agile Leadership. A lot of the same tools and ideas in this presentation are more deeply in that class, and you don't have to be signed up for Udemy in any particular way to use it. So there's your incentive. I'd send everybody a latte, but I haven't figured out how to do that yet. So again, thanks for being here. All right, so let's talk about, let's see, I guess I have to, there it goes, right, back we go. So leading unbreakable teams. So the outcomes for today, a deeper understanding of the key attributes of unbreakable teams, and then some awareness of some hopefully new tools and ideas, strategies that you can use to build more resilient relationships at work. So when we talk about an unbreakable team, what is a team is really the sum of all the relationships on the team. So if there's 5 people on a team, I like to say there's really 6 entities. If they're all in the room there's the 5 individuals, but then there's that being, if you will, that is made up of the interrelationships between the 5. So when we talk about an individual who's resilient, now we're starting to talk about relationships and this idea of social resilience. So that's what we're going to get into here. And we're going to keep it interactive. I'm going to have a lot of questions for you, but I encourage you at any time to go ahead and put a question into chat. And then as you saw in some of the housekeeping comments, we can kind of unmute people or get to people if you want to raise your hand or otherwise indicate that you have a comment. So we definitely want to keep it interactive. And what I'm most interested in hearing about from people are their challenges. What makes teamwork hard? What about when you're not on that fantastic team? So that we can directly think about ways that you might be able to, again, take action. So hopefully you'll get some inspiration to take action. So hopefully everybody's in the right place. A lot of this information is based on the information and the research that I did to develop this book, From Breakdown to Breakthrough. This was published in 2017. I was really honored and very lucky that so many of the clients that I've had, pretty much all in Silicon Valley, not exclusively, were willing to be interviewed in the book. I use their names, their company names. Everything is very practical and very transparent. And we've really gathered a lot of the best practices from the best leaders. And I would say that with a definite eye towards the longer term. So a lot of the leaders I work with and coach are at different, or even the teams I'm working with, the organizations I'm working with, there are different levels of performance and growth. And what I think people find as they get a little older and more experienced is they start to have a longer and broader perspective. I might win today, but really, how do I succeed and sustain over time? How do I build the kind of life, the kind of business, the kind of career that I really want, that I'm going to look back and be proud of? And I think if you do that, you're going to find yourself thinking a lot about your relationships. So my hope is that you'll have some inspiration out of today for doing that, and to feel better about doing that. You're probably trying to do it anyway. So just a little bit more depth besides the interviews here, besides my work. We say good artists borrow, great artists steal. So I have stolen most of these great ideas from a lot of places. I'll just mention a book called Anti-Fragile. If you're interested, you can look at that one. Some of the ideas in here are from Getting to Yes. Some of the ideas in here are from Lemonade, the book by Carlin and other people at SGI. So a lot of ideas here that I've incorporated and appreciate from many different sources, even and including from my grandfather, Kurt Lewin, are in the book. Here's the question, and here's our first interactive portion of our conversation here. I've laid down this idea of an unbreakable team, and I'm saying an unbreakable team is a function of what I'm calling social resilience. So having just heard the phrase social resilience, share in chat, what might social resilience mean to you? So when you hear the word social resilience, just what comes up for you? And I would say, in addition, how do you know if you have it? What would you look at, or how would you experience that to know you have social resilience? Carlin is talking about a strong network that are supportive, dealing with other people, right? So I'm going to add effectively dealing with other people. I think that's what you must mean. Gretchen, confidence in the face of negative or questionable feedback. So Gretchen's really, there's a lot there in Gretchen's comment. And again, any other comments are continue to be welcome. Confidence in the face of negative or questionable feedback. So I'm going to sort of double click on confidence and suggest that there's a certain safety. So social resilience means, in one sense, that I will remain part of this social structure, where we're talking about teams and organizations, even with negative or difficulty or challenge or barriers, right? So individual resilience, which again, there's been a lot of very important work done on that. Your resilience quotient is, again, some of the work that we do. Individual resilience is this capability. A lot of people use sort of that bounce backable. It's your ability to continue to perform, or at least survive in an acceptable way under stress or change. What I'm suggesting is something that might even be more important than individual resilience, and that's social resilience. Your social resilience is the ability of your whole team, your whole organization or group to perform and function during stress or change or challenge. And it's really based on the sum of all the relationships in that group. One of the reasons I'm interested generally in resilience is kind of some, frankly, very difficult things that have happened in my life. And so when you think about social resilience, a lot of what I'm talking about, a lot of this has been found in the work with families. So a family is an interesting group or team. And I'll sort of use this as an analogy maybe to teams in organizations and companies. So as you know, and it was Kurt Lewin who said that a team or a group is not defined by its similarities. We're not a team or a group if we're all salespeople, or if we're all men, or we're all immigrants, or we're all managers of a certain type. That doesn't make us, similarity doesn't make us a group or a team. Interdependence is what makes us a group or a team. The fact that we share our fate, that is really what makes your team a team. And so when you think of a family, let's sort of take a traditional kind of family. There, of course, there are many, many types and of groups of families. Any kind of structure can be a family, but let's talk about, let's say, two adults and children. The adults and the children may not have a lot in common. They're very different as adults and children, but they're absolutely a group or a team because they have shared interdependence. And so if you look at an experience that challenges your family, let's say an illness in that family, or the loss of income, or the loss of safety, or any number of things that can happen. You just look around the world for 1 minute, you can see there are clearly all kinds of groups and families and organizations under a lot of stress. How well does that group hold together? How do they continue? Like, what are the functions of a family? The caring of people, the social support, the emotional support, the providing of safety and health. Do those things continue, or do they go into what I call breakdown? So the question I was trying to ask was, why is it that some teams and organizations that leaders are trying to lead, why do those teams and organizations, why do some pull together under stress? They become stronger under pressure versus others that fall apart. And so that's really what I'm talking about here is, what is that ability? And I believe social resilience is frankly more important than individual resilience in some ways, especially if it's my company or I'm a key owner or stakeholder. I work with some leaders that are under a lot of trouble, stress, and they're going to be fine, but they're going to do it by leaving the company, right? Well, okay, sometimes that's the right thing. But I think many people are dealing with so much unintended turnover now. So many of my client organizations are dealing with this stress, and they're either in serious or danger of serious breakdown. So the idea is individual resilience is very important, but social resilience is a lot of what we need right now. Carlin, of course, is pointing out the much bigger picture. When I wrote this book in 2017 and I was interested in social resilience, yes, we had a world, a tough world, but who knew how our social resilience would be tested now and in ways recently. And I think, if you've heard that phrase about a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, well, that term was developed in the 1990s, but we are in a 10x VUCA world compared, in my opinion, to the world we're in then. So let me ask you sort of the question I asked before. If you have that kind of social resilience on your team, how do you know? So just working with that concept, I'd ask people to put in chat, how would you know if you have social resilience in your team? What would you look for? How would you know if you had it? You can bounce back from a setback. How else would you know? And long-term retention and employee engagement. That's right. Learning through adversity without blaming. Again, if the team handles stress and tragedy, supporting each other. That's absolutely right. So we find that organizations actually are, if anything, are more full of people. I'm certainly using this word support, engagement, all these comments. I think employees want social resilience more than they even used to. So I think that there was a certain, I'm an old enough guy here to have seen a few changes in the world. And I kind of remember a time where there was sort of a belief that, things were tough, and they were tough for me when I started. So you had to go through a tough time, and you got to pay your dues, and eventually you'll be part of our club, and eventually we'll really believe in you and you'll believe in us. But I think now people much more want these type of things that you're talking about. Thank you, Tyler. Can we explore our weaknesses? Can we even discuss them? So what I found is that the best teams with social resilience, another way of summarizing this that I wanted to cite is a study at the Sloan School of Business, which is the MIT B school. They found that the most sustained performance over time, especially under these kind of adversity or other things we're talking about, are teams that could do three things. And so my question to you, we'll make this hypothetically, how well does your team do these three things? The most successful teams have the highest level of social resilience when they can, one, see the interpersonal dynamic on their team. So what do I mean by an interpersonal dynamic? The dynamic is that system within your team, the human system. If you understand the dynamic of a team, you can predict its response to stimulus, right? So we have a dynamic. Every team has a dynamic. I would suggest every relationship has the dynamic. And so can you even see it? So sometimes we have to learn just how to see our team. And the next couple of slides, I'm going to try to give you some frameworks so you can see your team dynamic effectively. Some people are so kind of lost in it, they can't see it. They have other skills, but they don't have the skill to see interpersonal dynamics. So MIT Sloan School said, one, you've got to see it. Two, you should be able to discuss it, which is what some of you are talking about here. Yes, I can see the dynamic, that so-and-so dominates in meetings, or so-and-so doesn't give effective feedback, or so-and-so doesn't take feedback well, or you're Michael, you do all three of those things sometimes. So you have to be able to see your dynamic. Then you have to be able to discuss it, access it, talk about it openly, and then ultimately change it. So can your team see its dynamic? Can they discuss their dynamic? Can they change that dynamic? That's of what we're talking about. So when Tyler says explore a weakness without being threatened, right? So the hope is that, to use my family analogy before, if a member of the family has trouble or has a serious disagreement, they're still the member of the family. I think all of us would say that that's what we want to do with each other, with our families. And so it's a similar type of thing. I mean, I suppose there's a line, right, that people can cross where they might not be able to be a member of the family anymore, but that's what we're talking about there. Yeah, okay, so let's keep going. We're right on time here. So let's ask if the teamwork, if the social resilience is a function of the relationships, what exactly makes a resilient business relationship? And so I'm going to share this framework, and then I ask you to think about your own team, or any team, or even for that matter, just any business relationship you have. And I'm going to ask you in a minute to share, again in chat, which one of these attributes do you think is present on your team? Which one might not be as present in your team or your organization? And I'm going to throw the word culture in here, right? So a lot of what our relationship is, what Kurt Lewin would call the field. So relationships form the field that we're in. And he had a thing called field theory. What is field theory? Field theory is the idea that a person's behavior is a function of both the person, but also their environment. What's the kind of environment you're in? And so you've noticed this, I'm sure, anywhere you work. You work one place, meetings always start exactly on time. That's the culture. That's what you're used to doing. That's the field. People that are late, it's a problem, and then you go to another company, you're sitting there at 9 o'clock waiting for the 9 o'clock meeting to start, and then nobody shows up till 9:10, because that's the culture there. You're going to learn very quickly, not be the only idiot sitting in the room at 9 o'clock. You're going to take those wonderful habits you had, and you're going to start to change them to match the culture. Right. And so the relationship culture is what I'm talking about now, the interpersonal dynamic. And so I worked with a lot of, again, those research sources that I talked about, others, and to try to understand what makes for resilience. And so if we ask an engineer, what's resilience? The classic definition is usually explained by that video of the bridge in the wind. Maybe you've seen this. I don't bother with it here in the presentation, but you've got this bridge that's under the wind. It starts twisting. Now, there's a bunch of these videos. If you're, I'm like into these videos, so I love to watch these things. And some of the times it bends and finally it breaks and the bridge fails. That's a non-resilient bridge. It can't perform its function anymore. Some bend but don't break. And when the wind is over, they are a functioning, safe bridge, right? So what an engineer would tell you is it's the right combination of strength and flexibility. That's what makes a resilient bridge. The palm tree, not the oak tree, right? But in relationships, we need one more factor. So the way that I see and the way that we've worked in trying to make more effective and resilient business relationships is the idea of strong, flexible, and fair. We're not a bridge. We're not a tree. We're human beings. So what matters to us is not just strength, but also flexibility and fairness. So what do I mean by this in a relationship context? And then let me ask you to see if you have questions about it, or again, how your team might stack up. So in a relationship, this framework says that the relationship first needs to be strong. A strong relationship simply produces outcomes of value to the people in that relationship. I like to say the best relationships, 1 + 1 = 3. In other words, it's more than just 1 + 1 = 2. The relationship is strong when it produces value that nobody could really produce on their own. So let's say you've got an individual who loves to do a certain kind of work, but they're very bad at finding those clients. They're not good at marketing and sales and attracting people. They kind of hate that, but they love doing the work. And then you've got another organization that's really great at sales, marketing. You see where I'm going. Together, they create strength because they create a value. Now, you can think about what is strength, what is the value, or what's a strong business relationship? Well, it's probably going to make money. It's going to create money for people. It's going to fulfill a mission or a vision for the world. It's going to be actually good at doing that. It's going to meet needs for the employee and for the employer and for the community that are hard to meet any other way, right? So you've got a strong relationship if it's producing a lot of this outcome. But unfortunately, just a strong relationship isn't really a resilient relationship. An example is when I've noticed call centers. I work with a lot of clients that have call centers, and there's a technique they use where they go out in the middle of nowhere where there's very few employers, very few jobs. Especially with today's technology, you can put that data center anywhere, that call center anywhere. And so it's strong because those employees don't have another place to work. And it's strong because it certainly creates, hopefully, a good call center for the company. But they may not have to be very flexible. They may not have to be very fair with their employees. So when it's strong, but not fair or flexible, we call that coercive. Now, if it's strong and flexible, so what does flexible mean? Flexible means that it continues to perform under changing circumstances. We're not all locked into one way. So let's say something happens. Oh, I don't know, a pandemic, a change in technology, a million things could happen. Can we flex with that, or do we crater? Can we not produce the strength anymore? Can we not produce that outcome? Or are we able to flex and realize, you know what, I'm going to deliver my service a different way, or I'm going to change my market, or I'm going to change the hours, or I'm going to support this employee in a different way, or we're going to provide, this works for customer relationships. What customers want is strong, flexible, and fair. So the customer may change something, and can you flex with it, or are you kind of difficult to do business with? You're not flexible. So I know another example is a software company whose name I'll leave out, kind of famous for really being dominant in the market. Everybody uses them, but they're infamous for being really lousy to work with. The licensing is bad. The renewal process is lousy. The troubleshooting is lousy. But a lot of people do business with them because, if you don't use X for this software function, you're out of sync with a lot of people, but they're not very flexible. So being flexible, again, the first two, And then the final one that we add is fairness. So fairness really emerged. At one point I said, okay, so coercive is strong, but not fair. So strong, but so not strong, but flexible and fair is superficial. So we don't really create much for each other. It's flexible, it's fair, but it's not very important because it doesn't reply. If this is the question, Gresham, it doesn't really produce a lot of outcome. So the fact is you're easily replaced, right? So a resilient relationship is usually important in that sense. It's not just flexible and fair, but it's also strong. So strong without the others is coercive. Flexible without the others is superficial. So then fairness, at one point this was strong, flexible, and equitable. And sometimes I could maybe change that word back to equitable, especially with diversity, equity, inclusion type language. But I settled on fair because I noticed, and maybe you noticed this in your organizations, when people start talking about fairness, this is a lagging indicator. So when leaders tell me, or when I hear employees here, saying things like, well, that's not fair, pay attention. They're not just whining or complaining. They're trying to tell you something very important. So fairness, I've seen more people leave companies. I've seen more people, what I would call, leave money on the table, meaning failure to get the best outcome that everybody could have gotten because of this fairness issue. So what is fairness at work? You tell me, but the things that I saw was, one, equitable inputs and outputs. So is somebody always giving and the other person or group or party getting? Or is there a fairness between what's put in and what comes out? Years ago, I had my own company with a lot of employees, and we had an employee at one point, we were discussing compensation. It was a new fellow, a wonderful fellow, but he said, well, why don't we just take all the profits and just divide them among everybody equally? We should all be essentially getting the equal amount of pay. To him, that was fair because it was equal. But I would suggest that fair and equal, especially at work, are not exactly the same. And so I said to him, and he was a brand new guy, wonderful fellow. We'd all been building that company for about 20 years. I said, some of us have been around here building this company for 20 years. We've been investing all this. We built this thing that you're now a part of. We're glad you're a part of it. But 20 years from now, do you think your compensation will be the same as it is today when you just joined and didn't do anything for this place? Don't you think maybe it's a little more fair to say that the people who made that bigger investment might get a little different return? And he actually agreed with us. He goes, yeah, you're right. Equal would not be fair in this case. So the other thing that people want for fairness, I like to say, you can't always get your way, but you deserve a fair hearing. So what employees and team members want is, if they don't get the answer, so to speak, that they want, if they don't have full influence, resilience is based on a sense of agency. Can I influence my environment in a way to better meet my needs? That's agency. And so we're just like after 9/11, just like after the disasters in Haiti, we look at the individuals, and you'll look and you'll see, they'll do something in their environment. They'll give themselves some sense of agency, even if it's just to put the rubble in a neat pile. If that's what they have to do, some sense of agency, that family, a meal could be enough to kind of bring them back together. And so people want some sense of agency under these difficult situations. And so they can't always get what they want as a leader. You can't always give them what you want. You don't always know the answer to their questions, but if you treat them with respect, you give them a fair hearing, there's some empathy, there's some understanding, then people will be much more willing to accept difficult things, and they'll create a lot of loyalty. So we might say resilience. To some leaders that don't use this language, what they really want is, they'll talk about loyalty. And again, not sort of autocratic, salute the boss loyalty, but actually that kind of loyalty that says, I've got your back, you've got my back. And, we're talking about difficulties, but I'd like to make sure people understand this is also just about innovation. This is about doing great, exciting things. If you don't have this safety that people are talking about, right? I like to say that innovation is corporate improv. I love theater. I've done a lot of improv, and there's a few, if anybody has done improv, you'll recognize there's an exercise we did. Of course, we're all in one room then, and we'd walk around and we'd all just say to each other, "Got your back." So just imagine a room of all of us saying, "I got your back." And you're like, "No, no, I got your back." We might also walk around saying, "You're the best improviser in the world." "No, you're the best improviser." And that's all you do for 5 minutes. Well, why do we do such a team building? Because if I haven't got your back, I can't take risks. If I can't take risks, I lose. And so whether it's innovation or adversity, that's the side of strong, flexible, fair. So I would say I'd certainly open up to comments. If anybody wants to indicate they have an actual comment, we can unmute them, I think, or comments in chat. Yeah, so Gretchen is familiar with yes and. That's right. It's a similar idea. Corporate improv, corporate innovation, but not saying the no or the but, right? Supporting each other. So think about your own teams here for a minute. How does this framework relate to your team? Yeah, let's open up the microphones. That's great. Let's get some actual comments here.
So Michael, it's Kathy Hamburger. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Kathy. Great to hear you. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? I don't know if I
Good.
can turn on my my video here. Let me just see. But anyway, I think I love, I mean, everybody always says be flexible, but I love the strong and fair, because sometimes to be resilient, you have to be fair, and some, you can't agree with everybody. You have to kind of step back and think about what's fair in a business relationship. So I love that. I think, and I love the circles to show that it's, you know, it's balanced. I think sometimes people want you to agree with them all the time, and that doesn't always work, right? So.
Well, here's what we don't mean. I'm not going to change, but you need to. That's not the
Right.
flexibility I mean, right?
No, right.
Oh, yeah, we need to be flexible. It can be code for I'm going to mess with you and I need you to take it.
Right.
And so that's exactly what we don't mean, right? And that's why, as you say, they kind of have to be balanced with each other. That's a great comment, Kathy. Other comments?
Hi, Michael, it's Gretchen.
Hi, Gretchen.
I
How
was
are
just,
you?
I'm good. I was just thinking that it takes a lot of leadership strength to be flexible and fair in the right way. You know, you were saying earlier, fair is not equity all the time, but in figuring out what is fair, but being able to listen and put the entire team's interests and needs at the forefront, that takes a lot of strength. And I think leadership is typically seen as strong if they sort of bulldoze and lead and run off. But real strength is in bringing other people in, which takes that flexibility and fairness.
No, that's a great point. Yeah, and you bring up one of the barriers, right? You know, sort of this model of leadership, our belief around leadership. And that's a little bit, Gretchen, what I was getting to before, that as I've matured with as a leader, and as I've worked with others, if they've developed, that's kind of, I think you're right. You're talking about the more mature leader. Strong, what is strong? Is a great question. Many, and it is very cultural as well. And so I want to be mindful. I don't know if anybody's, I know we've got a couple people that are in Australia and New Zealand today, but I'll call that a bit still of a Western kind of a culture. I'm not an expert, but I having worked in many cultures, remember I was working with one group and talking about, you know, involving the employees and saying, oh, you know, the manager should ask the employees what they think. You know, that basic principle, the people that are going to solve the problem ought to be involved with the deciding how to solve the problem. So you should have asked the employee. Person said to me, I'd quit if the boss ever asked my opinion. Right. So they kind of wanted that other kind of leader in a way that you're talking about. Well, decisive, right? So what do we need? Why do we need it? I think long term, what people want is the kind of strength that allows the difficulty to be discussed. So the idea is that, and we'll move on here in just a sec, if what the resilient teams can do is get all the heat without the fire, right? They get all the light without the pain. They can handle the difficulty without the drama. So a lot of what we're trying to do in resilient teams is say, wow, we're going to get into some heavy stuff. Again, we have to see our dynamic, discuss our dynamic, change our dynamic. And so that's real strength. I remember Carlin, when we were working a little while ago and we were talking about feedback, and Carlin said, you know, if I give you very strong and direct feedback, it's a sign of respect. It's a sign of trust that you're a big enough boy or girl to take it and to hear it. Of course, Carlin needs to give it in an effective way. But I would agree. That's the kind of strength we're talking about. So thank you, Gretchen. And then I want to go to Lynn's question. What is SCARF? I know who David Rock is. Neuroscience. What is SCARF? Do you want to say quickly?
Yeah, security, social confidence,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm
I don't
so
mean to put you on the
tired
spot.
tonight,
That's okay. Yeah.
Relatedness, fairness.
Fantastic. Yeah. So I will look at that more closely. I appreciate that. David Rock, for those of you who don't know, has a neuro leadership practice and really looks at some of the kind of the brain or mind aspects of this. And one of the things that I know he talks about is the idea of the mirror neurons. And this is our ability to empathize
Right.
and feel, right? So a mirror neuron was discovered because I'll spare all the details, but they're doing some experiments. They had a brain scanning method for, I believe, a monkey or a chimp. And then they had another chimp also with it. And the other chimp started to eat a banana. And the chimp that wasn't eating banana started the parts of their brain that light up when you eat a banana started to light up. And so when we see pain in someone else, our human brain feels the pain. There it is: status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness.
Thank you, Marty.
Yeah, Marty's either very smart or very fast with a Google search or both. So that's what we're talking about, is those mirror neurons, and there's a lot of support for that scientifically. All right, great. So, and we are going to have just more of kind of an open conversation time here in a few minutes as I just cover a couple more concepts. So this is the idea of strong, flexible, fair. And the idea is this is like any good model. It's a tool for analysis and assessment and evaluation. So you can have a conversation with your team. How strong are we? How flexible are we? How fair are we? You can also use it to design something. So I'm developing a program for my employees or for my customers or for my leaders. How do we make sure that the relationships are strong, flexible, and fair? I actually have an assessment tool on my website that allows you to assess a relationship. So again, my idea is I'm not trying to type the person, whether you're a MBTI or a DISC or an Enneagram. Yes, but what I'm much more interested is typing, if you will, the relationship or the social system, the thing called Michael Gretchen. Gretchen and I have a relationship. She's a certain way as a person, I'm a certain way as a person, but then there's the way we are as an entity that's called Gretchen Michael. Are we strong, flexible, fair? That's what I'm thinking about. Thanks for posting the website, and the team assessments are on there. 1 + 1 = 3. I hope so, Gretchen. I think that's been true with us, by the way. I say that sincerely. So
I agree.
Yeah, that's lovely. So, and could we be stronger, more flexible, more fair? I don't know, maybe. So you can see how Gretchen and I could have a conversation using the framework. So the other big idea I wanted to share is this idea of the heat curve. So works with a lot of cultures. I'll leave the name out. Let's just call it, we'll call it Butterfly Corp. So people inside Butterfly Corp have a phrase about their company. They say it's butterfly nice. This is a version of Canadian nice, or whatever you want to call it. Is there a New Zealand nice? Is there an Australia nice? I don't know. But it's this kind of idea that we have a nice culture. We're not kind of we're nice to each other. We're respectful. I was in a senior meeting in this company, Butterfly Company, I've named it. Their C-suite, their board of directors, this publicly traded company. The chairman, the CEO was upset with some of the results from the international division. President of the international division is there discussing their plans. CEO is kind of upset about this and makes some comments about how they're concerned, they're not happy with the performance. And at one point, the president of international literally said right in the meeting, I'm feeling kind of personally attacked right now. And that shut down the conversation. So the ability of your team to handle heat without going into breakdown is what this heat curve is about. So it's another way of looking at resilience. The best teams, the best relationships, and we've all had heat in our business relationships, have a really good heat curve. So let me define the pieces of this chart, and then you can think about your own team's heat curve. So below is what we call breakdown. So let me start with the x-axis. So as you go to the right, heat increases. What is heat? It's excitement, it's passion. We're finally talking about it. I've always thought this, I've never said it. Maybe it's difficulty that's finally being aired. Maybe it's a cool, exciting idea that nobody's been too controversial, that questions our assumptions. Maybe it's, shooting a sacred cow. You've got somebody in the room who we call an iconoclast. They want to shoot out, and then there are other people who want to protect it. So generally, if you're really going to have an exciting, let's just say in a meeting, right? The boring meetings, we sit there, we wait for our turn to give the status report. The interesting meetings, we're going, wow, look, hey, they're getting into it, right? It's exciting, even if it's kind of negative, right? We get caught up in the passion and the drama. What the best teams can do, you see in New Zealand, difficult conversations are a long time coming. That means you've got a lousy heat curve, right? So what I'm suggesting is that the heat curve, by the way, I stole this from the Stanford, some great people who wrote Beyond Machiavelli, Getting to Yes. I combined this with some other things. So we've tested this a lot of places. So at first, as heat goes up, it's interesting. You're on the edge of your seat. You can't wait for your turn to speak. But then for most teams, there's a point where it starts to get a little too hot. And then they actually go into breakdown. So the original idea is the higher up we go, the more we'll have a chance for a breakthrough. Further down we go, we finally go into breakdown. So what the best teams do, and what I'm suggesting we do through various leadership methods, is to shift this curve up and to the right. So it can go further and further into the heat curve, kind of never going into breakdown. And I've seen teams, again, where it's not New Zealand nice, it's not Butterfly Company nice, it's some other companies that maybe have different reputation, where they'd have a different culture. And, we mix it up, we fight it, we work it out, and we work together, and we clasp hands, and we work forward together as a unified group. And there's even a lot of research that shows it's the argument that builds the buy-in, not just immediate alignment. The greatest example of this that I know is, you see, I have it in my notes here, Gettysburg. So there's a great book called Upside, and it's all about people who managed to take an upside out of a disaster. And the introduction of the book is really a little bit of the history of the Gettysburg battle. You had the two generals on each side, the Northern and the Southern general. Southern general had a perfect plan. Here's the plan. They spent the evening making sure everybody knew the plan, was ready to execute the next morning at dawn when they knew the battle would begin. The story is that on the Northern side, the general and all of his generals or captains or whoever it would be fought all night over what the plan should be. And in the last few hours before dawn, finally came up with a plan they all thought made sense. Now, of course, there's an old saying, no battle plans ever survived contact with the enemy. In other words, you can plan all the time you want, but the plan is unlikely to be able to be followed exactly. Right? Eisenhower said, plans are nothing, but planning is everything. And that's what we need. A good heat curve allows you to mix it up. And then you really understand, where did this plan come from? What did we reject and why? What did we include and why? That way, the first moment something goes different, we're not stuck. waiting for the leader to tell us, but we were part of that, and we built that resilience through that heat together. So I'm minding. Yep. So I think what I'm going to do is kind of stop right there. There's a number of ideas we've had, and I would just love to hear any reactions or questions people have about these ideas and what else we can do on these topics in the last about 10 minutes that we've got here. And if you want a prompting question, I would say, what does your team's heat curve look like? Does it drop off at the first amount of heat, or does it keep going?
So Michael, it's Kathy Hamburger again. I
Yes.
think I love this concept in my past lives, life. I love the lot of heat, a lot of debate, a lot of different opinions, and better plans or planning, right? Because of it. I think that we have some heat, maybe not enough. So it's going to inspire me to go back and generate more, because I think that's where you get the best ideas, the best thoughts, and probably a better strategy.
Yeah, that's great. And sometimes people even just show this heat curve, or many companies that have seen this and have really adopted it, actually on their agendas, they've got your topic 1, 2, 3. They put little flames on the topics that are intended, right? Part of why this was developed is because I had an executive say to me, we need more heat. We're too nice. We don't have healthy debate, or the meeting is not where the debate happens. So cultures figure out how to do conflict. Right. They figure out how to do it either poorly or well. The state, the old joke, and I love Canada, and I've worked a lot in Canada. They're shaking your hand in the front, but they're reaching around the back with the knife.
Right.
Right. So for me, I'd say, hey, just come at me. Okay. I'd rather let's deal with it. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's just deal with it. So they actually use the language. People are going along. Okay. Nothing else on this topic. And somebody will say, you know what? I think there's a little heat here that we're missing. We tried this last time. All respect so-and-so. It didn't work. How do we know it's going to be any better this time? That's bringing a little heat. But again, that's much more valuable. I went into some of these executive meetings. I was looking at their entire operating cadence, and they had a strategy committee and an operations committee and a people and culture committee and a business development committee, and so, for acquisitions and so forth. And I observed these meetings, and in my opinion, 80% of the meetings were a waste. And these are a lot of very expensive executives in one room. I wanted a clock that didn't show time passing. I wanted everybody to put their compensation into some machine, and then the cost per minute. That was $1 million a minute meeting, probably. I mean, maybe not literally, but close to it. Well, if that's what you're doing, you better bring the darn heat. Rather than just, it's lovely to pass the latest product around and we can discuss, should it be pink or purple? That's not for the executives to do. That's for somebody else to do. What the executives need to do is work out the tensions and resolve the issues that are affecting the company. And so if they won't bring the heat, we like to say dysfunctionality at the top gets worked out down below. And so somebody's going to have to work out those conflicts or tensions. The question is, do you have that capability? And then I'm looking at a comment a little higher up from Gretchen. Brainstorming meetings, supposed to be about coming with ideas, and then getting into the heat, ruin the true benefits of brainstorming. So that's the other thing about this idea of heat. And it can be misunderstood. So I remember when I was first using this, sometimes a leader would say, hey, I bring plenty of heat. It's the other people that have a bad heat curve. Excuse me, let me clarify. Me as a leader, not being afraid of heat is easy, right? Any change effort, whoever has the most control has the easiest time with the change. If you're completely in charge, you have all the authority, easy to quote, bring heat. So the question is not can you bring heat? The question is, can we as a group take that heat and work it? And so as Gretchen says, sure, your classic idea of brainstorming, was kind of invented, if you can say that brainstorming was invented in advertising. And the idea was, you know what, the receptionist, anybody could have a great idea. And there was a culture in advertising that only the partners, they're the creative geniuses, only those few people at the top could have any useful ideas. And they said, wait a minute, no, everybody. But again, somebody coming in out of role, not seeing that role. So role clarity is another way you move up and to the right. Is you say, no, actually, we want all these ideas. We have a purpose rule that says we'll understand them before we evaluate them. That, again, that fair hearing that precedes decisiveness. So we still need to be decisive, but we can do so if we bring more heat.
So you mean that with the right leader, that brainstorming dysfunctionality could have been avoided?
I hope that's right. So it's kind of a bit of a setup. I remember years ago, I was asked as a facilitator, somebody said, well, I've decided to do this thing. Can you facilitate it with a meeting with my team to get them to agree? Well, is the decision made? Well, then let's have the meeting about something else.
That's awesome.
Right. But let's not pretend, again, if it's not optional, leaders sometimes have to decide things and announce those things. But it should be on a continuum where they go all the way to delegating completely to sometimes when it's appropriate. Sometimes what the team wants is, please, leader, make a decision so we can all follow it, right? So, we're in breakdown, help us, right? There's too much heat here or something's unfair. We need somebody to be accountable for making a final decision. What is this? Welcome to every team meeting we're hired to facilitate, Carlin says. That's a great comment. Dysfunction. Okay, so say it again. So Gretchen, dysfunctionally at the top gets worked out by the people below. That's right. So when we say leadership casts a long shadow, the people in charge are the owners of the field. They're accountable for the culture. They make as much as anybody, they're actually responsible for it. So if you want a culture where it's strong, flexible, and fair, where you want a culture where there's a good heat curve, kind of safety you're talking about, that scarf type of culture that Mr. Rock is talking about, that's really up to the leader. That's why we're so focused on leadership, frankly, is because we have so many examples and we have some very negative, very difficult examples that taught us the same lesson that the leader, this is what motivated Kurt Lewin to study what he did, is experiences him personally as well as in the world about World War II. You had a country, Germany, the last thing they wanted was any more war at the end of World War I. Something happened over those 10 years to change things so much. That was mostly about leadership and the use of leadership. And so what we're saying is we want to make sure that leaders are doing this for good intents and for good purposes and with a set of values that are not something we kind of worry about separately. Now, it's that we incorporate those in everything we do. So to me, there's actually a humanistic belief system, frankly, behind this heat curve, behind this idea of social resilience, which says that we believe in people. And we believe that people mostly want to do a fantastic job and that people have potential that's untapped and that there's almost nothing more fulfilling, nothing more important, nothing more inspiring for a leader than to look back at their career and their life and say that they did that they helped their organization do that. So that's what gets me up in the morning. So I'll share that. All right, so let's see if there's anything else, any other comments or questions from anybody in the group.
Well, this is Carlin, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here and for being our presenter of the day. And we want to invite everybody to participate in the Inspiring Leadership community. because we will keep this discussion going. And it's great to have you. And thank you so much, everybody, for attending.
Excellent presentation.
It was great, Michael. Thank you so much. It was great.
Thank you so much. Great opportunity. I look forward to doing it again. And again, if I assume, even if you didn't put your email, let me check with Zach and Joseph. We have everybody's email. Do you think?
Yes, we do.
I know I have Gretchen, make sure Marty, that I have hers, anybody who came, even people who may have dropped off. I was kidding about you having to stay. So, so soon after, I'll send you a link to Agile Leadership. There's my program on Udemy. It's all kind of short, less than 4-minute videos, links to all the team assessments for strong, flexible, and fair there, the heat curve, and then a lot of other details about how you do this. So thank you again. And thank you, Inspiring Leadership, for convening this. I'm very pleased to be part of it.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks so much. It was really
Thanks.
insightful. Thank you.
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
My
Thank you,
pleasure.
Michael. Thanks, Carolyn.
Super. Bye.
Bye-bye.